Curry decides in the opening, Warriors, 119-109. Lakers, 23 PTS, 4 assists and 3 3-ups. For everything, if you are Warriors or Lakers, this is the time. Today you will see how Steph Curry, with 23 points, 4 assists, and 3 three-pointers, turned the key in the debut and pushed the Warriors to 119-109. Stay with me because there are plays that the broadcast didn't highlight and tactical details that change the game. You'll recognize this pattern every time Curry calls for responsibility. Ready to see the sequence that disrupted the Lakers' rhythm and decided in the fourth quarter? Take a deep breath, adjust the volume, and understand why this victory says more about the season than it seems. Let's get to the key move now. If this breakdown helps you, leave a like now and subscribe so you don't miss the next game readings. Activate the bell and comment "fourth period" so I know you are here. Next, I'll show you the play that killed the Lakers' reaction. Let's talk as if we were side by side on the couch, following each possession and deciphering the game in real time. I know you've noticed. There are nights when basketball seems to turn into a living puzzle, where each piece only fits together when someone finds a detail that others ignore. And that's exactly where names like Luka Doncic, Jimmy Butler, and Stephen Curry come in. Each of them turns a different key to opening a closed defense, changing the rhythm, messing with the opponent's psychology, and in the end, deciding matches that seemed balanced. Today I want to take you along this path step by step so that you understand why it is so difficult to guard Luka, why Butler builds an advantage without shouting, and why Curry changes the geometry of the court with a single movement without the ball. I'll start with what most intrigues those trying to contain Luka, the release of the shot. A lot of people look at it and think it's just talent. It is not. There is technique and intention. The ball's exit point is high, almost behind the head, and the lateral movement of the body shifts the marking axis. It seems small when you see the replay in slow motion, but in real play it turns into an abyss. The defender raises his arm at the right time and yet remains centimeters behind. This unbalances any dispute. Luka uses his body as a shield, anticipates contact, and releases the ball when the marker's hand is going down, not up. You feel the frustration in the eyes of the scorer. It's no wonder that experienced technicians, watching from the sidelines, keep repeating, it's the angle and the timing, not just the distance. But basketball is not an isolated duel. While someone is trying to decipher Luka, Jimmy Butler appears on the other side, who doesn't need pyrotechnic explosions to impose himself. Jimmy builds an advantage with small victories. First, the seal in the low post against smaller markers. Then, the half-second pause before infiltration, forcing help to commit early. Then, the economic spin near the rim, the one that turns contact into a read and a read into a high-value basket. It seems quiet, but the impact is noisy on the scoreboard. And when he receives the ball in movement, coming diagonally, the scenario changes even more. The defense takes an excessive step, fears the first hit, and that's it. Space appears for the floater or the low pass, hitting the ground, finding the teammate's cut. Speaking of movement, do you know how I see Kuminga on nights when the game calls for transition? He is the spark that turns defense into attack in 2 halves. Rebound, 2 powerful dribbles, head up, and the court already seems smaller. The most interesting thing is that, with it accelerating, the surrounding decisions become simpler. Either the layup comes in traffic, or the high pass appears at the exact time for Butler to fly to the rim, or the shot from the perimeter appears clean because the defense collapsed 1 step more than it should have. Speed is not just running. Speed is reducing variables. And therein lies the beauty of collective play. While one runs, another reads. Draymond Green, for example, is the type of player who creates invisible trajectories. He gets around, repositions, threatens a handoff that never comes, and in doing so steals a second from the defense. With 5 to shoot, that second one is worth its weight in gold. When Butler receives and floats the ball over the challenge, you notice how small synchronies build baskets that seem difficult. It wasn't pure improvisation. It was coordination. Now, hold on to that thread because I want to talk about the dynamic duo that changes the map of the court without touching the ball all the time. Curry and his own movement without the ball. When he releases the pass and turns to the other side, it's not time to rest. It's to reconfigure the helplines. By repositioning himself, he creates leverage in two ways. He attracts two defenders for fear of the shot, and at the same time opens up a corridor for the light screen of those coming from behind. It is often in this return, in this relocate, that the three-pointer is born with perfect balance. If you pay attention, notice that the feet arrive before the hands. The body organizes, the ball follows. Automatic, the kind of automatic that is built with thousands of repetitions. On the other side, there are people looking to fit in. When a team gives up height in a trade, it gains in spacing but loses in margin of error in rim protection and second chances. It's the hidden cost that appears in the fourth quarter, when the leg weighs heavily and the box out needs to be perfect. This is where decisions like forcing the ball into the post come in with a pivot who hasn't found his rhythm yet. If the touch arrives late, the defense has already glued the lines and the turnover appears. It's not just the pivot's fault. It's a collective cadence. The ball needs to touch the perimeter, go back in, go out again. Rhythm creates reading. Without that, it becomes a predictable launch that the defense is grateful for. Quick pause to look at what happens when mismatches arise. Butler against a marker he knows from training, for example. Ex-partners know vices. They know where the hand looks for theft, where the foot opens too much. Jimmy takes advantage of this mental library. It makes contact at the exact point, absorbs the force in the hip, uses the backboard as an ally, and finishes the play without rushing, almost teaching. This is where you gain a point of efficiency. This type of psychological duel erodes a defense because it takes away the spirit of anticipation. Nobody guesses anymore. Everyone reacts. And when the game gets tight, decisions appear that define the tone of the last quarter. The defense tries to deny the handoff to Curry. If the defender on the outside reaches too high, the back door comes. If it gets low, it becomes a step back of three. If there is an exchange without communication, the cut finds the passing line, and there is a clean shot. You realize that Curry doesn't need to dribble 7 times to create separation. He needs half a meter and balance. The hand leaves the ground at the same moment that the eyes have already chosen the point of the hoop. Confidence becomes technique, and technique becomes mathematics on the scoreboard. I want to go back to Luka for a minute, not to repeat, but to connect. When the pick-and-roll partnership comes into play with someone who understands his rhythm, the game takes a turn. The blocker's defender needs to decide whether to jump on the ball, delay coverage, or run back to the lane. Luka reads the marker's hip angle. If he is facing too much towards the baseline, he cuts through the middle. If help comes from the opposite side, he crosses the ball in the air with spin to land softly in the corner. And if the exchange is slow, the step back comes. You even know what he's going to do, but knowing doesn't mean stopping him. This is the drama for those who defend it. There are also times when the opposing team tries to accelerate without control. Mistakes followed by passes, attempts to force a post without deep advantage, insistence on a player who is still cold. The clock, which should be an ally, becomes an enemy. The Warriors, when they are focused, capitalize on these gaps. Stealing the ball, open field, and that's it. The bridge appears that increases collective confidence. The team runs to the center of the court at the opponent's timeout, and the expression says, "Now it's our turn to impose rhythm." I like to look at Horford's defensive rebounding as a symbol of a simple principle. Those who dominate the glass make better decisions. A solid rebound cuts through the opponent's legs and sets up the opening sentence of the next possession. It's not just catching the ball. It's about taking it and thinking ahead. Who is free? Where is the numerical disadvantage? The paddler who anticipates avoids the wave. In big games, this reading gives points without glamour, but with real value. There is a part of the matches that I usually call swing minutes. It's not always both endings. Sometimes there are 7 or 8 to go, and one team is 6 points ahead. It's the time when small details determine whether leadership becomes a comfortable mattress or evaporates in 2 possessions. A close-out one step out of timing opens up an infiltration that shouldn't exist. A light trap without a firm base allows for switching and kills the advantage. A cross pass without the correct weight becomes a counterattack. And of course, there is the opposite. The infiltration that draws second help, the precise kick-out, the extra pass to the corner, and the clean shot. When Curry kills that ball, the court seems to smile. Not for aesthetics, by logic. The system did what it was supposed to do. I talk about logic because Butler is a player who embodies it in his own way. He doesn't need to win every play with speed. He needs to beat the reading. When he receives with medium space, he reminds the defense of what they fear: penetration with contact. However, he often does not need to complete this penetration, just the threat. The marker retreats, the help commits, the passing line opens, and the cut comes from behind. The basket that emerges from there is not flashy, but it dismantles the opponent's layers of protection. And this process, repeated for 36-38 minutes, takes an immense toll on concentration. The collective impact also appears on the less glamorous side. 3 steals and a stump don't count the whole story, but they tell the direction. They are indicators of presence, of the ability to shorten spaces, to take it from the right hand and put pressure on the watch. Every possession in which the team steals a ball is a possession in which the opponent wonders if they are playing too fast or thinking too little. Doubt is the best defense. From the moment your opponent doubts, you have set the pace. I want to open a parenthesis for the athletes who need to get involved. The fans often demand immediate aggression. Aggressiveness without reading becomes forcing. Reeves, for example, when he finds the balance point, does what the system asks. He hits inside when the closeout arrives late, releases the ball when the help closes, cuts without it when the defense only looks at the ball. If he remains passive, the defense scores the rest comfortably. If he rushes in, he delivers a counterattack. The key is the feeling that your play fits the rhythm of the team. This is not speech. This is what separates a flow attack from a set of isolated actions. DeAndre Ayton in a low post illustrates another principle. A post is not an address. It is timing. Receiving with your back to the basket only makes sense if the position was gained with the body before the ball left the perimeter. If the pass arrives when the defender has already re-established his support, it becomes a contested shot, or worse, a loss of the ball. Posting requires entry angle, depth, and passing threat to the weak side. Without these 3, it becomes stubbornness. And stubbornness tends to be costly in tight games. Now come back with me to the moment when the clock says 2:35 to go and the difference is manageable. It is in this space that great players reveal what they have trained for years. Butler receives, pauses, observes the marker's support foot, returns to the center, calls the foul, which does not need to be a marked foul, just a felt foul. The defense takes a step back. He goes up. 2 points. On the next possession, the ball rolls around the perimeter. Eyes turn inward, and suddenly Curry stops 3 feet behind the line, as if it were natural. There is no excess dribbling, just enough to get into the rhythm. The ball rises straight, kisses the invisible air, and falls without touching the rim. This sequence is no coincidence. It's method. You realize this entire plot falls back on a simple thesis. Elite basketball is engineering advantage. Each micro-decision builds a step. Hold the body in the diagonal cut. Rotate the wrist on the cross pass to the corner. Step with the inside foot before the floater. Change dribbling hands 1/1000th before contact. Position your shoulder on the marker's chest to receive the lack of attack disguised as a dispute for territory. Some call it malice. I call it a technique applied to the context. When you put Luka, Butler, and Curry together in the same narrative, you see 3 ways to shape a game. Luka dominates the space between expectation and execution. He does what everyone knows he's going to do, but in his own time. The Butler transforms silence into authority. It's not the volume that scares, it's the inevitability. Curry redefines the perimeter and, in doing so, pulls the defense into uncomfortable places. Every time he repositions himself, another math appears on the scoreboard. And when the team captures this gravity, baskets emerge that appear simple, but were born from a well-solved maze. There is a final detail that I like to highlight, especially for those who follow closely. The game rewards those who read first. The closeout that arrives controlled, with high hands and low hips. The exchange that is not desperate but rehearsed, with clean communication. The box out that anticipates the ball's trajectory does not react to it. The light stopper that gives the conductor an angle, not just contact. It sounds didactic, and it is, because in the end, the ball falls to whoever left the least space for chance. And when the ball falls into the right hand, you already know what's coming. Butler attacks with purpose. Curry unleashes venom from the perimeter. Luka ties the appointment in a knot that only he knows how to untie. If you want a practical summary to take away from this conversation, take these. Don't underestimate the value of repositioning without the ball. He decides the timing of the defense. Don't trust that low post alone will create an advantage. It's the depth that rules. Don't lose patience with small gains. They saw a sequel. And above all, understand that players like Luka, Butler, and Curry don't live on miracles. They live by refined standards to the point where they seem like miracles. The next game you watch, pay attention to three things. First, when the point guard releases the ball, where does he run? If it's always in the same direction, the defense will read it and cut it. When you go the other way, see how many markers turn their necks at the same time. Second, when the winger receives with his back, see if he gained position before the pass. If he didn't win, count how many dribbles he will need to build an advantage that could have been given by his body. Third, when the infiltration comes out, notice where the help came from. If it comes from the strong corner, the pass, and it has to be on the way before help is even committed. This isn't guesswork, it's scripting. And if you're lucky enough to see the end of the game with Curry's ball, Butler's possession, and Luka's reading in the same period, treat it like a lesson. Curry will show you that space is a shooting-approved state of mind. Butler will prove that aggressive patience exists. And Luka will remember that in the elite, predictability is not a defect when control of the time belongs to you. Here is an invitation for you to look at basketball not only as a spectacle, but as a conversation between brains under pressure. The cuts are not random, the passes are not whimsical, and the shot that falls in the vein is not luck. It is the sum of small choices made with discipline transformed into great results. In the next broadcast, when you hear me talk about a restrained closeout, a clever seal, or a right second relocate, know that I'm not pointing out details for the sake of detail. I'm showing you the door hinges that, once oiled, open the way to victory. And if they ask you why it's so difficult to mark Luka, you already have the answer. Because the shot comes out where the arm can't reach, and when the defender's mind is still rising. If they ask you why Butler seems simple and, at the same time, inevitable, you answer, because every possession of his has purpose. And if the question is Curry's impact, say it without hesitation. He doesn't just make shots, he redesigns the court. That's how you win a big game. Not in the magic ball at the end, but in the accumulation of good choices that makes that ball at the end the logical outcome of something that was already written in every detail. I close like this. If you want to understand why the Warriors open games with reading and close with execution, this is the place. Here we dissect Curry's relocation, the cast's advantage engineering, and each adjustment that turns into a point on the scoreboard. No myth, just standard decision-making and results. Now advance one level, enter Playlist Warriors Analysis. There are the half-court breakdowns, the defensive coverages, Kerr's counters, the logic of handoffs, and why each shot falls. Episodes in sequence, frame by frame, with plays paused and reconstructed so you can see what the live camera doesn't show. Click on Playlist Warriors Analysis. Marathon the cuts, the reads, and the pick-and-roll variations. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share with anyone who wants to talk about basketball properly. Next game, you won't just watch, you will anticipate.